Okay. All right. Welcome to Yoga to Support Psychotherapy and Other Wellness Practices, an info session on the latest research around trauma-sensitive yoga, compassion-focused practices, and race-based traumas, the added layer to this that we are very timely and needing to add in to many of our healing practices and circles these days. So we just have some pictures for the air of, just kind of bringing the human quality in there, and inclusivity, and remembering all the people that are included in the human family. So you can read, when you get the slides, you can read all about everyone who's helped author this. Today, it's me, Alicia, and Jessie that are helping present the information, but Julie Egan and Samaya Suddath, and you'll each have had a large hand in bringing this information together in this presentation. And you're going to hear from Samaya, who can't be with us today live, but you'll hear an asynchronous recorded video of her and talking about race-based trauma and healing for those that that show up with brown and black skin in our world. So this is just an inquiry, and through a quote. And then Alicia, after I go through this, why don't we do start your grounding, okay?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so an institutionalized rejection of difference is an absolute necessity in a profit economy which needs outsiders as surplus people. So this quote might hit people differently depending on where we are in our understanding of trauma-sensitive yoga, race-based trauma, trauma-sensitive mindfulness. Wherever you are in your response to this, I want you, in anything you hear today, whether it's about yoga, race-based trauma, mindfulness, and sort of engaging with looking at bias and conditioned thinking, if you show up with if you're for white folks, I want you to come at these things hopefully with a spirit of curiosity and self-compassion, compassion for self and others, and non-judgment, knowing that how you respond to it now might be different than how you respond to this information tomorrow. Looking to this information as an observer, just like we do in meditation and yoga, looking to be a witness to ourselves and to our conditioned thinking and our conditioned way of being, and using the tools of yoga and mindfulness to rise in our vibration and rise in our consciousness if we're looking at this from a spiritual perspective. So Alicia, take it away.
All right, my friends. So I'd like to just do a little bit of centering, getting us grounded, not only in our bodies, but in our minds, that we would be able to really connect with this information that's present with open minds, open hearts, that we would be curious and ask questions, not only of others, but of ourselves. So I'd like to take a moment to just get comfortable and to give yourself permission to get comfortable. And that could be just adjusting your seat, lengthening your spine, straightening the posture, deepening the breath. When we think about grounding, centering, getting comfortable, what comes to mind? Is it immediately physical? Maybe you feel like, well, if my body feels comfortable, then I'm ready. Or does getting centered or grounded mean something different? Now know that you can come into this centering, this grounding, in any way that feels comfortable. So if it feels best to lie down, If it feels best to stand for a moment and just feel the earth beneath your feet. If it feels better to close the eyes or keep them open, you know that you have that choice. We'll begin here with a few deep and full breaths. And as you breathe in, feel that breath, trace that breath coming in through the nose, down the throat, past the ribs and into the belly. And as you exhale, feel that breath, trace that breath again, coming up from the belly, past the ribs, the lungs, into the throat, and back out the nose again. Maybe this is the first time all day that you have become aware of the breath. And if that's true, what do you notice? Maybe what you notice is a sense of restriction, feeling as though you can't take as deep of a breath as you'd like. Or maybe there's physical restrictions someplace else in the body, tension in the shoulders, the forehead, or the jaw. Maybe the restriction is happening someplace else, within the mood, the mind, or the focus. My hope for you is that through this gentle attention to the breath, through this gentle attention of where the body is in space, that you would feel safe enough to lean into that restriction. And as Julie said, be curious about it. The more we can invite our bodies, our minds, to lean into restriction rather than tensing up even further, the more we can open ourselves to new knowledge, new light, new identity, new beliefs, and new understanding.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
Cool. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but this is just a little bit about us. If you want to read more about where we're coming from, this is me and Alicia. Essentially, I'm going to break this down really quickly so we can spend time on the things that need the attention today. But I'm a public school teacher, and I'm a social emotional inclusion specialist in the public school system, and I teach predominantly at Joy of Yoga, yin yang yoga, and I teach trauma sensitive mindfulness. So and I have a lot of background in that if you want to talk anymore about that. Alicia.
Hi, I'm Alicia. My background is really in restorative yoga, gentle yoga, getting yourself super comfortable in whatever situation you're in, adapting to whatever support is around you and leaning into that support. So really what I'm most passionate about.
And then Samaya, who's you'll be hearing about a recording of, you'll be hearing from her and being led in a grounding in around race-based trauma here in a bit. She and also has they pronouns. Also, my pronouns are she, her, by the way, if I have to go through that. But Samaya is a 200-hour yoga teacher, trainer. She's also a prenatal yoga teacher and a full spectrum doula. And she's also becoming a Reiki master this month. She's in her last round of becoming a Reiki master. So they are just doing awesome things in the world for specifically Black, Indigenous people of color, and for others. So let's see. Jessie.
Hi, I'm Jessie Kissinger, pronouns she, her, and I also teach a Joy of Yoga, mostly meditation-oriented practices, and I did a 40-hour training with the trauma sensitive yoga.
Okay. If you don't mind muting your mics, just make sure everyone's muted. That'd be great. And here's all four of us. Here's Samaya, me, Alicia, Jessie, all of our faces. Here's the agenda. I'll give you a few moments here just to look it over so you can kind of prepare your nervous system to kind of see what's coming next and where we're headed. Not going to go bit by bit through it, but just kind of check it out. And we'll move forward into the role of the yoga teacher and all of that good stuff. We'll start with yoga. So this whole presentation we've done this is our third time doing it. We do it every quarter, and every quarter we kind of update it. So when we first started it, we started it from the viewpoint of somatics, right? Knowing that we need to start with ourselves first in our own bodies, and then slowly work out as we deal with communal and trauma, which is where we are now in our evolution of this webinar that we offer. So on one hand, in terms of trauma sensitive yoga and how we teach our classes at Joy of Yoga and in the community, we know we are not therapists, but we are here to support our students in developing a mind-body awareness as yoga teachers and meditation teachers and practitioners. And we do see a need for further mental health support from psychotherapists. And we try to refer our students out if we see that there's a need for, deeper processing of trauma, if they ask for it, and if we see there's a need once the rapport has built, as for sure. So we definitely try to stay within our scope of practice and refer outward. We look at yoga through a mind-body practice through the lens of building compassionate awareness to ourselves as observers and to the body and mind connection. And then we also try to facilitate opportunities for students to move their bodies, and not just move now, I should probably update that wording, but also be in stillness too. So we are finding all these ways, somatic ways we can explore a journey to safety, because safety is a journey that may or may not even be real in this society or time right now for many of us. So, but we use movement and stillness and mindfulness now to facilitate opportunities to look at empowering ourselves to make choices, which Jessie will talk about later, in a spirit of non-judgment and self-compassion. So those are our guiding principles. Now we're online these days, so this is the meat and potatoes of it these days. When we were all in person, it looked a little different. So obviously when you're online with us, the big point is I'm going to just kind of pull out highlights here so we can of course spend time in the places I think that really need the attention. And you can go back and read this if this is of importance to you. You will get the slides, but really the big thing here in our online platform is that students are always invited to try a variety of yoga shapes, okay, and meet their body where they're at, and explore things even regardless of what the teacher is cueing, especially the four of us in the way that we teach at Joy of Yoga and elsewhere in the community. And we also encourage students to stop their camera if need to. They don't need to be on camera unless they want to. And really using the online space to cultivate a sense of what we call in yoga is samadhi, of going into the self and exploring the self. okay? And these online classes, we don't have the social pieces going on around us, you know? So we can use this online approach that we're in these days with by default, thanks to COVID, to really start to use that awareness to kind of go maybe a little bit deeper with curiosity and compassion into our internal experience through mindful movement and stillness and rest and meditation or mindfulness. So anyway, this is, of course, we can go more into more detail with that later on, but this is kind of the nuts and bolts of it. And then, of course, the role of the yoga teacher, you know, we really try, of course, anything we do or suggest is optional to the students. And we always encourage students to listen to their bodies first, and also teaching about the anchors to the awareness of the body, not just like listen to your body, which is kind of a vague stance these days that's given out, I think, in a lot of classes, but really understanding, what does that mean to listen to your body? And I know Jessie in her classes really talks about sensation, right? And learning to understand, what does sensation, you know, feel like, building curiosity around that concept of sensation. And I do that as well in my yin yang classes too, called yin and vinyasa, you know, and I know that that's a huge part of Samaya's classes in her yin classes too, in learning to build a new relationship with sensation in the body from a lens of curiosity, right? And once we can really learn to, I guess, discover what sensation even looks and feels like in the body, then we can learn to also create building blocks to move into curiosity. So hold on one second. I'm just gonna do one thing really quickly. It's gonna take a pause for a moment, y'all. Before I'm gonna stop sharing for a second so I can mute people. I'm gonna stop share for one moment and just go to our participants and mute. Okay, here we go. Okay, going back to, okay. Can you all see this? Probably not. No, you can't. Okay, let me go back. I gotta go to share screen again. Okay. All right, now share. Okay. And we're gonna present. Okay. All right. Now we're good. Okay. So, and then of course, here's kind of going into the vibe of thinking really about this picture. Was really just a spirit of thinking, not only for those of us with white folks that are watching, starting to think about trauma sensitive yoga, not just through the lens of somatics now, but through the lens of how my own healing and my own sense of self-discovery can impact and possibly be a part of the healing of systemic trauma, okay? And how do those align, right? And how can we create a sense of connection, like what we see here in this photo, of unity, of relationship building across racial lines, and do some healing on our own end through healing our own history of conditioned thinking in the lens of racial trauma. Because we're all, I think, whether we say this or not, when you're in the United States, we all have conditioned thinking around bias and racism that we are all ethically, I think, inclined, whether we acknowledge it or not, to accept and heal from, and learn how our conditioned thinking might have been a barrier for us to develop relationships with Black, Indigenous people of color. So just something to think about when we think about how our own healing impacts communal healing, okay? So I'm speaking of that as a white folks. Samaya is going to be talking here as a Black, Indigenous person of color here in a few moments. So as we go into that thinking about communal healing, how our own healing, which a lot of people end up coming to yoga or joy of yoga specifically to look for healing, we have to connect those dots, okay? So I learned in my own process how to connect those dots through the concept of adverse childhood experiences. I started digging into my own history in trauma therapy and in my own background as having someone with complex trauma. And I started doing my own healing. And then my therapist taught me about ACEs. And I'm also a teacher that works in an underserved community in Ferguson, Missouri. And I started seeing that how we all, when my therapist told me about ACEs and I read The Body Keeps the Score, that we all had ACEs, and that my healing, my own personal healing, actually, like, there was a connection there, and I had a lot of more privilege, and there was a recollection process for me in that once I started to tap into the ACEs research from that they did at the CDC. So that's just a little minor side note in how the dots connected for me. Okay, everyone's dots connect differently, but that's how the dots connected for me. So with adverse childhood experiences, it was a study, of course, that went on for, I think, 14, I'm sure someone in the comments knows. So if you know, let me know. But I think it was 1998 to 2000 and I would say 10 or 11. And it was an experience. It was Vince Felitti and some other person whose name I cannot name off the top of my head right now. They really did a study on people who had experienced adverse childhood experiences for several years and looked at how the trauma and abuse impacted their long-term health outcomes. And obviously that meant that many of them who had child sexual abuse, neglect, parents with addictions, divorce, jail, family with mental health issues, or die by suicide, they all link to chronic problems, mental illness, and substance abuse, misuse in adulthood. And then, of course, there was also the big one that I think that there's like 3 subheads that me and Samaya added into this presentation, was the witnessing violence in the home community. That's kind of like a really vague ACE that I think like actually accounts for like 30 ACEs. Okay, that means, that implies racism, school to prison pipeline, food insecurity, and mass incarceration. So the ACEs score has a little bit of a ways to go in terms of looking through race-based trauma. Okay, but it started, hopefully with COVID, we will be looking at those a little bit more deeply. But in terms of how communal healing, our own healing impacts communal healing, I always tell people to start looking at ACEs and start seeing how your story impacts. It might be the same as someone else's story that might have brown or black skin. And then seeing how trauma is it's a common denominator for many humans. And that's not to normalize trauma, but it's a baseline that I think is really interesting to reckon with. Now there's privilege and that shows up there too, and that's a whole other presentation. But in terms of looking at our common humanity, sometimes we have to look at that, yes, this ACEs does not discriminate by zip code. It doesn't discriminate by gender or school system. It happens to all of us. It's the great equalizer, all right? The great equalizer. So that's how my own racial healing and my own unconditioning reckoning began, was when I was going through deep healing of my own trauma. And then I realized there was a deeper communal healing that I needed to do as well. Because my family, I come from a family of former slave owners that owned the plantation, and I know that conditioning has been passed on to me. And I've used mindfulness and meditation and yoga to help, and Buddhist sanghas to help me kind of undo those and look at those from a lens of compassion and communal healing, which is why I'm here today, because I feel like this is a part of my way of opening up, and it's still part of my process to continue to offer that space for us to acknowledge and wrestle and heal together. Okay. So Samaya, this just begins Samaya's part, and you'll hear from Samaya here in a second, but Samaya added this quote: "Caring for myself is not an indulgent, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." So I talked to you a little bit about my experience as a part of the white community, okay, and being a white person with in the racial context of the human family. Samaya is going to talk a little bit more here about her experience and her background in how trauma has shown up in her life as a Black Indigenous person of color. So here we go. Here's from Samaya. You should be able to hear this. I tested this with my daughter today, so. And I'll show you the slides. She's going to reference them, and we'll see the slides.
Hey, Julie, the audio is not coming out for me. I don't know about any of the other participants.
Yeah, I can't hear it either. I was just
Okay,
about to write a note.
let me stop share. I think, let me share screen. Let me stop share. I'm gonna share screen again. Here we go. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, hold on. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Why isn't, please install the Zoom audio device. Oh, crap. Okay, hold on a second. Audio sharing applications such as install to continue sharing computer sound. Hold on. Cancel. Let's try this again. We pause her. Okay, we pause. All right. Share screen. Stop share. Okay. Let's try again. Share screen. Enter your password. Okay. Oh, okay. Yin. Yeah, is it? Hold on a second. What's my password? Yin, yeah. Okay. Educate. Okay.
Sorry, Julie, it's not coming through.
It's not coming through. Okay. Let me do stop share one more time now that it went through, and we'll see it. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm screwing my AirPods for a second. Because that might be it. Because I think it's coming through on mine. Hold on a second. Let me go to system preferences. Hold on. Where is, okay. Let's go to options. Let's turn Bluetooth off. Okay. All right. So let's go to share screen again and see if that works.
Here to share the social justice and trauma sensitive teachings portion of this workshop. Hello everyone, my name is Samaya and I am here to share the social justice and trauma sensitive teachings portion of this workshop. Before I begin, I'll let you know a little bit more about me. I am a yoga and meditation teacher, doula, Reiki practitioner, and visual artist. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. So I'm just going to go over the information as I have presented it. That's so hard to say. The way it is laid out for you in the slides. So the impacts of race-based trauma. What is race-based trauma? Racial trauma or race-based traumatic stress describes the cumulative impact of racism on an individual's mental and physical health. Race-based traumatic stress is linked to mental and physical health issues. So what is race-based traumatic stress exactly? Like, how can this racial trauma manifest? Racial trauma can come from incidents such as workplace discrimination, police brutality, hate crimes, in addition to the experience of cumulative events such as microaggressions, exposure to racial trauma in the media, so watching viral videos of police brutality and racialized violence. These incidents can also range from being profiled in grocery stores, shopping malls, restaurants, driving while Black, medical racism, any event in which a person's race is a cause for mistreatment and when they're going through the world functioning as a human being and just trying to meet basic needs. So race-based trauma can be linked to the sensations of hypervigilance, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and contribute to the development of chronic physical health conditions such as hypertension, which is also known as high blood pressure, and heart disease. So race-based trauma and racism is not just some annoying thing that people of color have to deal with on occasion. This is an ongoing trauma that we have to deal with on a regular basis, and it comes for us at any time. And no matter how good our self-care practices are, this is an ongoing exposure that can help us get out of a state of regulation on top of the other things that happen in life. So going now to the social justice and trauma sensitive teaching slide. In the United States, Black, Indigenous people of color are most impacted by race-based traumatic stress caused by living within a white supremacist power structure. Although Black, Indigenous people of color are regularly exposed to race-based traumatic stress, never assume the status of someone's nervous system and level of trauma based on their race. So for white practitioners, white providers, yes, Black, Indigenous people of color are experiencing higher rates of toxic stress, higher rates of traumatic events, but that's going to affect everyone in a different way. And never assume in a yoga class or another kind of mindfulness or movement class that your Black or brown student is coming in automatically going to be hypervigilant, automatically feeling anxiety because of their race. So this information is here to be a tool to help you be more of a racially equitable, anti-racist provider, but please don't use this information as a way to further damage or stereotype people. So just carefully sifting through this information and looking at some of the links that are going to be provided at the end of the presentation will also help dive deeper into this information, this research. So self-care. Self-care is vital for Black, Indigenous people of color. Self-care is healthcare. Self-care is not a luxury. We are learning that self-care has become a popular catchphrase. People are learning the importance of self-care, which is beautiful. But we're learning that self-care is not time at the spa all the time or nails done. Self-care is tending to your mind, your body, your spirit in multiple ways. And having access to self-care for all people, particularly Black, Indigenous people of color, is very important. So self-care is healthcare. Breathwork, meditation, mindfulness, and movement practices such as yoga and qigong are excellent elements to incorporate into one's self-care practice to help regulate the nervous system and care for the physical body. So ongoing states of hypervigilance or anxiety, constriction of the blood vessels contributing to hypertension, yoga, breathwork, meditation, mindfulness, quiet time, adequate rest, healthy diet. These are all parts of a regular self-care practice that we need as Black, Indigenous people of color to exist in a healthy body and navigate through day-to-day living in the United States. So in the resource section, I'm going to include resources that center the experience of Black, Indigenous people of color. So there's going to be some simple tools like a self-care wheel. There will be links to websites and organizations that specifically focus on mental health and therapy for Black people, Indigenous people, people of color. There's going to be links for yoga practices, videos, etc., that are specifically centering people of color. And I think this is very important, especially as a yoga teacher and a yoga practitioner. I have found myself in situations where I'm going to yoga to practice, and I'm in a room full of white students and a white teacher. And sometimes that puts me in a state of hypervigilance because I'm being profiled, I'm being looked at, I'm being watched, and I'm there for self-care. I'm there for my practice. So I think that having resources for and by people of color and sharing resources for people of color that are created by people of color are very important to honoring what's happening in our world and creating a safer space for folks who are wanting to expand or deepen their self-care practices. So thank you all for joining me for this portion. And I would like to close out by just connecting with the breath and just taking a moment to get grounded and just absorb the information, notice what has shifted for you during this portion of the workshop. So whenever you're ready, you can come into a comfortable seat. If you're already there, maybe you need to readjust your seat. You can feel comfortable closing your eyes or bringing your eyes to a soft gaze. And find a comfortable space for your hands. Maybe the hands on the lap, palms could be resting on each other, hands on the knees or the thighs. And just take the next couple of moments to connect with the space that you're sitting in. Just feel the contact between your body and the surface below you. And bring your awareness to your spine. Slowly lengthening the spine, allowing the shoulders to draw down the back, creating lots of space between shoulders and ears, and reaching the crown of the head up towards the sky. And so here, sit for a moment with head aligned over heart, heart aligned over pelvis, and notice the physical sensations in the body. Notice your mood, your thoughts, and your breath. This is a practice of observation, not judgment. And as you're ready, you can deepen your breath, taking some deep breaths in and out of your nose. Imagining on your inhales that you're sending oxygen to every part of your body, feeling the body expand outward. And as you exhale, feel your body just fill with a sense of release and relaxation. And a few more times like this, inhaling to send oxygen to the entire body, expanding outward. And exhaling to release. A couple more breaths here. As you feel ready, if your eyes are closed, you can gently blink open your eyes. And then slowly just take the next couple of moments to come back into your physical form. Maybe you're rolling the shoulders a little bit or moving the arms. Take some time to move head, neck around as well. And just notice as you come back through center, anything that's shifted for you in the physical body, the breath, the mind. It may be a big shift, a small shift, nothing at all, but over time, these small practices of connecting with the breath and stillness greatly impact the body, the mind, the breath. And you may not feel the effects now, but later on throughout your day, you may feel a shift that slowly or largely takes place. Well, I thank you all for joining me for this portion of the workshop. If you have any questions, please feel free to check out those resources at the bottom of the presentation. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Getting out of here somehow. I'm going to stop share so I can go back. Okay, hi. We have people. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to sharing again. Sharing the screen. Hello, everyone. Goodbye.
Our all-in-one marketing platform helps you market
Whoa.
your business smarter.
Guys.
With a marketing CRM that puts your audience at the
Take
center,
it.
you'll know who likes your idea and who loves your idea. Market smarter,
Hold on, you
grow
guys.
faster.
Hey,
With
take
the
a minute,
all-in-one
and
marketing
I'm going
platform.
to reconnect my audio. So my AirPods, so just, Alicia, maybe just take a minute, just take a break, take a pause while I reconnect the audio, and we'll go, give me like 2 minutes, okay?
OutSchool offers thousands of interactive online courses, connecting
Get off
hundreds of
here.
teachers with pre-kindergarten to high school learners around the world.
Okay. Getting out of that. Okay. Go to Bluetooth. Huh? What? Yes, you're doing good. Okay. Please. All right. Hopefully these are connecting. All right. If these don't connect again, then we're just gonna go back. Oh, nothing. I don't have that much left to go. Okay, I'm done with the AirPods. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can still hear you. So if you want to continue just on your laptop's microphone, that would be fine. Unless maybe your internet goes out. There's always something, isn't there? Well, let's take a few moments to see if maybe she pops back up.
Can you see me?
Yeah?
Oh, who, me? Pop back up?
Yeah, you were frozen.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm back. We're good. All right, so let's go. Let me get back to the slides. Lots of popping around. Okay, let me get this down. There we go. Let's go to present. All right. Okay. Let's move right through all of that. Okay. So here are some. Okay. God, that sound.
We can hear you, Julie.
You can't hear me? Okay, because my phone, it keeps telling me that you can't.
Okay, we could hear you.
Okay, now we can't hear you.
Here we go. Can you hear me now? Are you good?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay, cool. All right, so you'll see these slides again, but I'll just give a couple of minutes just so you can read. Those were Samaya's major points in their presentation. Then moving forward, she just said, I'll go ahead and read this word for her because this is pretty important. In the United States, Black, Indigenous, people of color are most impacted by race-based traumatic stress caused by living within a white supremacist power structure. So although Black, Indigenous, people of color are regularly exposed to race-based traumatic stress, never assume the status of someone's nervous system and level of trauma based on their race. Self-care is vital for the wellness and resilience of Black, Indigenous people of color. Self-care is healthcare. Breathwork, meditation, mindfulness, and movement practices such as yoga. I have a really hard time pronouncing that, but that are excellent elements to incorporate into one's self-care practice to help regulate the nervous system and care for the physical body. And then there is a slide that we'll show you later on down the road. So this is my last slide. So knowing that of all of those things that impact someone's nervous system, whether it's ACEs, which also impact race-based trauma, we have to start looking at people's development and how they show up in our yoga practices and our healing practices a little differently, right? So over here is what many people, I work in education, so here's how at least those of us expect people to show up when they're ready for learning. But here's how a lot of our students and in yoga and in our school system and our healings show up actually, okay? So there's a disconnect here in what we expect as practitioners at times and what's actually happening over here, okay? So the reptilian brain maintains the basic systems for survival. So the reptilian brain is really that brain, the survival brain that tells your body when it's hungry, and also when there's a threat. So we'll go into more. I don't want to explain more of that because there's other things we need to go into here, but there's the limbic system manages pleasure, and the neocortex is the manager for logic, imagination, planning, and control. And when it comes to matter of survival, the lower brain, which is the lizard brain, as they call it, the reptilian brain, overrides the ability to use our conscious brain and the conscious part of our brains, causing humans to react in 4 survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So just again, reminding us why we're here, the human family. We want all people, whether we're coming from a Buddhist meditation perspective or yoga, we want all people to be free. I know Jessie teaches a loving kindness meditation, and I'm teaching a mindful of race class right now. And that's almost every meditation practice I teach. And I know Jessie teaches, it all comes from a space of wanting a sense of inclusivity and peace and happiness for all. So I just want to go back to that's the point of why this matters. Okay. So that's what these pictures are about. Okay. All right. I'm done.
All right, so I'd like to take over for a moment and just start talking about the window of tolerance. If you do your own research and look up the window of tolerance, that's how you'll see it listed and labeled. But I think it's important, Julie and Jessie and I have spoken before about maybe reframing it to the window of connection. And I'll explain a little bit more why in a moment. But the window of tolerance is a concept created by Dr. Dan Siegel, who says that, who was studying the nervous system and the ways our brains react and respond, especially after trauma or extreme adversity, or if we are daily living through that type of adversity, which is something Samaya mentioned. Within the window of tolerance, your brain and your body are able to think and feel most effectively. So it's, like a really good day for you would be a place where you feel like you can react, respond, connect with people pretty easily. And there might be a few challenges that come your way, but you're able to more smoothly move through them. We're able to manage the emotions fairly easily. So Julie, I'll have you scoot to the next slide for me. Thank you. The window of tolerance can be illustrated in several different ways, but I find that this one is fun and easy to understand. It's the window of tolerance in rainbow forms. So again, that window is where we can tolerate other stimuli or connect with other people, right? So we can think of it in both of those ways, both of those labels. It's optimal functioning of the brain. Now, yoga can help us stay or get back into that window of tolerance or to establish it in the first place. For many people who are working through chronic stress, or, you know, race-based adversity, that window of tolerance may be very small or almost non-existent. So it's important that our yoga classes, our mindfulness tools are there to help us sort of reestablish a place where we feel peaceful and where we feel calm. Because it's a place where we can start becoming aware of these sensations and how our bodies manifest anger, sadness, grief, doubt, those sorts of reactions. So optimal functioning would be that rainbow. It's good days, happy days. But if life takes us outside of the window of tolerance because of adversity or trauma, we can go into sort of these polar opposite states. One would be hyperarousal. The other would be hypoarousal. So it's distress in both senses, but they manifest a little differently. So one would be heightened anxiety, hypervigilance, like Samaya was talking about in her video. Sort of feeling explosive almost, or in the school system, Julie, I'm sure you've heard people labeling kids as acting out. So this type of behavior would be hyperarousal. Hypoarousal would be like shutting down, freezing up, withdrawing emotionally, or not being able to respond efficiently or effectively. So breath work, mindfulness, movement, yoga, all of these tools can help harness these experiences, whether we are coming into a class hypo or hyper aroused, and get us back to a state, or get us to a state for the first time of feeling calm, feeling as though we can handle those challenges effectively, feeling more like ourselves, and feeling like we can trust ourselves, trust our bodies, and trust our brains. Julie, can you go ahead and scoot to the next slide, please? So I'd like next to talk about some of the unique properties of stillness and movement, and then move into how they work together. So it's important, I know some of the folks watching today are psychotherapists, and it's important that if you are referring your clients to yoga, that you really understand there are many different styles of yoga and different teaching styles within those many different styles. So a stillness-based practice would be one like restorative yoga, gentle yoga, yin yoga. A movement-based class would be like traditional hatha, or even hot yoga, right? It can vary so differently. And not all of those styles are going to be taught from a trauma-sensitive lens. And I don't want to say that not all of them could be. I think it is possible to have that type of approach in any class. But you will find, you know, certainly at Joy of Yoga, that these classes and these practitioners are viewing things more from this type of lens. And it's important also to recognize that there are unique benefits to each type of class. So if you just say to your friend or to your client, go try yoga because I heard it helps, it can be helpful to manage emotions, it's important that we really realize what we might be getting our friend or our client into. A stillness-based class for a hyper-vigilant person might be a good fit. A movement-based class for a hypo-aroused person might be a good fit. Maybe not. Some people who are really shut down love a hot yoga class, one with tons and tons of movement. So it's important to recognize what the benefits and potential drawbacks could be to referring or recommending these classes to others. So I've listed here on this slide, I don't want to read it word for word to you, but I've listed some of those unique benefits. Stillness-based class, of course, would be more about comfort and internal practice, moving more slowly and activating the rest and digest response of the nervous system. A movement-based class would be more stretching, strength building, releasing tension, a focus on the external practice and safe alignment. Now, both of these, if you'll move to the next slide, Julie, both of these types of practices can still induce that feeling of regulation, that feeling like you're in the optimal rainbow state, the window of tolerance or the window of connection. Both of them, stillness or movement-based class, can help us build awareness around how often we enter distraction, help us return to the present moment, help us stay with the sensations in the body, and to move away from judgment when we recognize what those sensations are. And any type of class is going to offer some level of stillness and some level of movement, but we know that those ratios and that sort of bell curve of offering stillness and movement is going to be different from class to class and teacher to teacher. But as long as the teacher is employing something like an empowered choice-making style of teaching, which Jessie will go into later on, students are going to be encouraged to trust themselves and their experience, to redefine or reclaim their body as a safe place to be, whether they are moving or still. So I'll let, I think there's a little slide next for Julie, and then it'll be Jessie's part.
Yep. And of course, this is, again, we're going back to inclusivity, you know, that what's the spirit, why are we linking all these things together? You know, it's going back to that sense of, you know, meta, loving kindness, you know, we're all worthy of that, regardless of the color of your skin. But, you know, sometimes the route to that means we have to look at all the things involved, regardless, and how our socioeconomic, sociopolitical impacts our ability to achieve meta in the physical world for all. So anyway, so 6 guidelines of trauma-sensitive mindfulness and meditation. And I would also add yin there because I teach trauma-sensitive yin. So, of course, you feel free to choose. Obviously you all can read, but really, as opposed to meditation and mindfulness, really what it comes down to for me is that we're meditating in my classes, and I know Jessie's, we're going about it through the lens of the window of tolerance and learning to use that window of tolerance to actually, AKA, connect to ourselves deeper and using the meditation process, learning to feel into, I know at the beginning of my meditation classes, I use the window of tolerance as a meditation to check in with where are we, okay? How did we walk into this practice? And how can we use this information about ourselves in this moment coming into this practice to say what's the next best empowered choice, which I will go into next with Jessie, to help inform our practice. So that's a little bit different, I know, than some other classes. And of course, just using the meditation space to, you know, coming with a space of curiosity and inquiry into looking at, you know, meditation practices like metta, like rain, you know, and through the lens of the window of tolerance, and doing breath work in those 60-minute classes and the 30-minute classes that Jessie and I both teach. So if you have more questions about that, I could go on and on and on about that, but for the lack of time, let's move forward, because empowered choice making is really what it's about. So.
Yes, so in these approaches and all of these approaches that we've been talking about, regardless of the style, still or moving or meditation, we're bringing this idea of empowered choice making, and The idea behind that is that embodied yoga or trauma-sensitive yoga acknowledges that relational trauma is rooted in the denial of choice. So yoga becomes a practice of making choices as a way to reclaim personal agency over one's body. And instructors facilitate this in a few different ways. The first is invitational language. And a lot of times that means that the instructor will offer a speech at the beginning, just a quick reminder that this is the student's time and space and practice. They decide if, how, and when they move their bodies. Everything that the instructor offers is a suggestion and only that. They can also use invitational language more at a sentence structure level. And the way that that would look is, instead of, as you'd see in a usual class, someone saying, lift your right arm, they would say, you might lift your right arm, or you're welcome to lift your right arm if you want to. And the idea behind that is just that as you would offer a breath cue in a class, a reminder for the awareness of breath, this is a reminder of the possibility of choice in each moment that you're there and you're moving. And another way that instructors facilitate this is by offering multiple choices in the different yoga shapes that they're offering. So instead of just maybe doing a head circle, you would do a half head circle, or the option to stay in one place, or an option to do different paces. And the idea is that you're offering a range of movement for people to start to explore sensation in their body, as opposed to offering just one, especially if someone is just getting reacquainted with their bodies. If they only have one option, they may kind of feel stuck. And another aspect of this is that all of these options are presented equally. So the best option is the best option for you. What's most interesting, what's driving your curiosity, or what just feels right or good in the moment. In a way that instructors then kind of help people explore that is through somatic cues that cultivate interoception, or mindful awareness of sensation in the body. So people are making choices, and then they're feeling into the experience of that choice, and then they're making another choice. And you know, as instructors, we're encouraging people to make decisions that feel the most supportive to their bodies in the moment. So it's kind of sensing into a sort of self-knowledge and then acting from it. So it can become this really virtuous cycle of empowered choice making. And one of the reasons this notion of interoception is so powerful is, well, Bessel van der Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps a Score, just says it so well. He says, our sense of ourselves is anchored in a vital connection with our bodies. We do not truly know ourselves unless we can feel and interpret our physical sensations. And another trauma researcher, Jennifer West, talks about this experience of feeling, interpreting, acting on these physical sensations by saying, she offers this progression. First, I know that I have a body. Second, I befriend the body. And third, I begin to find resources within the body. So if I'm starting to feel anxious, I maybe learned in my yoga class that if I bring awareness to my breath, it helps calm me down. Or if I start to feel myself getting pulled into a memory, I can ground in my feet. I can feel the ground. I can touch the wall, and I can know physically where I am and connect to the present moment. All of these approaches, this kind of approach to language, and especially interoception, this language that I'm describing, it comes from the Justice Resource Institute's trauma-centered, trauma-sensitive yoga approach, which is a mouthful. So I'm going to call it TCTSY from now on. But both of the researchers that I just mentioned specifically offered TCTSY programs to their study participants. And at this point, it's considered an empirically validated clinical intervention for complex trauma. This is not the only approach to trauma-sensitive yoga, but it does have the most research behind it, mainly because the method is highly structured to fit within the research model. For example, teachers need to do 300-hour training to be able to legally call what they teach TCTSY. However, there are some limitations to the research, mainly that participants have been predominantly white women. And when you think about the pervasiveness of institutional racism, just because a method has the most research behind it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be the most effective for all people. So this is something that the folks at TCTSY are examining right now. They're being very upfront in their trainings that historically they've had this blind spot, and they're working on expanding the research to be more inclusive. So I just wanted to offer that as a just some context before I lead you, if you'd like to join me in a practice using some of the ideas that I've just presented. And you know, again, it just gets back to what Samaya was talking about. And it's another reminder of how essential it is that teachers of color, queer teachers, teachers of all physical abilities are at the forefront of creating trauma-sensitive practices and spaces. So,
well, and I did want to add on that choice, because I know Samaya is big, and she said it a couple times, of making an empowered choice of representation. So and of having those places for Black, Indigenous people of color to practice with one another, and the importance of that through the lens of empowered choice making. Just wanted to highlight, just echo that. So
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, so if you would like to join me, I'm gonna scoot back. We've been sitting for a while. We've been taking in a lot of information. So if you'd rather stand, it might feel good to stand right now, or if you feel like laying down on the floor. I want to be mindful of the time, and just, you know, note that it's almost 4:15 now. So if you have somewhere you need to be, we totally respect that. This video will be here for you later. If you just need a break, again, this video will be here for you later. So just as a reminder, this is your time and space and practice. And yeah, so I am sitting here as you are exploring that, the shape that you've chosen. You might start to let the eyes be soft, looking down at the floor, or closed. And just notice, maybe taking in the senses a little bit. What information is being offered to you in this room right now? The temperature, sounds. You might start to bring some awareness to the breath, or even just note the form of the body. If the elbows or the knees are bent, where the spine is in space, how you're oriented. And if you'd like, you might start to let the chin drop forward. And then let the chin come back to level and start to lift the gaze up toward the ceiling. Maybe noticing the jaw, letting it soften, and then coming back to center. You could start to move in a little bit more of a sequence, dropping the chin forward, and maybe with an inhale, starting to look up. Or you could pause, looking up, looking down, just whatever feels most interesting to you in this moment. You could stay with that, or you could bring your left ear to your left shoulder. I'll mirror you. And then come back to center and shift to the other side. Again, moving with your breath, your pace, looking up or down, or letting the ear approach the shoulder. So letting this be an opportunity to explore the muscles in the neck, the shoulders. Maybe that starts to lead you into a bit of a circle, maybe a half circle or a whole circle where you look up toward the ceiling and down toward the ground. Be taking that in a couple directions. And when you're ready, letting the head settle back to center. Sensing how the head balances on top of the neck. You might draw the shoulders up toward the ears and then let them drop down. Maybe take a couple of shoulder rolls. Be noticing if you feel any sensation in the collarbone or in the shoulder blades, the upper back. And then you could roll the shoulders forward. If you'd like, reach the arms out and up to the sides, let the hands meet. And with an exhale, draw the hands down the center line. Just taking a couple big sweeping breaths with the movement, if that feels supportive in this moment. Or just continuing to witness your breath exactly as it is. Knowing that however the breath shows up today, it's welcome. Your body knows how to breathe. You could continue to take these sweeps, or maybe let one hand drop down and sway to the side. And then with an inhale, reach up and sway over to the other side. Again, either moving with your breath or pausing if that feels particularly interesting, to just rest there and let the ribs expand. Maybe sensing into the muscles along the spine. Just noticing what you notice. And when you feel even, you could also maybe integrate some twists into that movement. Either flowing with the breath or staying on one side for a while. What do you notice about moving your body today? Knowing that every day is just a little bit different. How does it feel to move after taking in all this information? Again, just observing. Maybe even letting that observer be a kind witness. Reaching the arms up one more time, drawing them down the center line. And then maybe letting the hands come in contact with the legs. Feeling the palms in contact with the legs. The soles of the feet on the floor. noticing any after impression of the movement. Sensing the body breathing. And just close out with some words of loving kindness. It might feel nice to bring the hands to the heart, or even bring a hand to the cheek if that's comforting to you, or just let them rest at the sides. Whatever feels most supportive in this moment. And we'll start just by offering these words to ourselves. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Again, like Julie said at the beginning of this workshop, knowing that our personal work, our delving into awareness and self-compassion is part of the larger work of healing the whole. Just taking a couple of breaths in to nourish, to offer ourselves these words. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And then offering that out to all beings. May we be safe. May we be happy. May we be healthy. May we live with ease. Thank you so much for sharing this practice, sharing your time on this Saturday afternoon. Peace.
So as we move forward, well, go ahead. These are just, I'm just going to kind of get through this. Inclusivity. We haven't even dealt with ableism. That'll be the next edition.
Mm-hmm.
So dealing with how body is and ableism, that'll be the next up level of this offering. So again, I just want to come back to what Samaya was saying here and just give us why is this important? Okay, why do we up leveled from our last one? Now we're looking at, how we show up in a socio-political climate, and how does that impact our healing in terms of trauma sensitive practices. Okay, so I'm going to leave with an inquiry and a couple of next steps. So a race-based trauma sensitive mindfulness inquiry before we part. Whether I'm speaking from white folks, but I think this inquiry can be for anyone, and mostly for white folks, I think, watching this. But if you want to speak, I'll leave that later. Okay, so is how I am thinking, acting, and feeling contributing to the suffer or freedom of myself and marginalized humans, specifically Black people of color? And the reason why I'm specifying this to the white folks is that we take up a lot of space in the world. So, and it's not just us. Those are two things that are true. So I want to bring this into your spiritual practice and your mindfulness practice, and to bring that inquiry into your practice every day as much as you can. Okay. And how can we use yoga and mindfulness practices to keep encountering this question within ourselves? Okay. Because healing doesn't happen in a vacuum, and neither does trauma. Right? And so next steps I want to offer you is if you are someone part of the white folks community, feel free to reach out to me about some mindful of race opportunities coming up at Joy of Yoga. If you are a Black, Indigenous person of color, please reach out to Samaya, as she has a lot of offerings for yoga and meditation offerings for people that need that space of, for those spaces to feel a sense of safety. And then of course, intersectionality matters, right? So we have there the work that white folks do and the work that Black, Indigenous people of color do together. But then we have spaces where we can come together, right? And that's where, you know, the large, you know, many yoga communities are hoping for, but we have to have those spaces where we can do this sort of bigger work, the socio-political work, the trauma sensitive systems work, you know, in our own groups, right? So I'm not saying I'm pro segregation, but we do have those opportunities for you if you want to go that space. So feel free to reach out to Samaya or I on those, or Joy as well. So you can read more about our offerings. Samaya teaches on Wednesday nights if you're looking for a Black-led class. We also have Jasmine who is from the Latinx community, and she teaches on Thursday afternoons at 4:30. I think there's another class of hers, and then there's also Meenakshi, who's from India, who teaches on Monday nights at 5 o'clock and Friday nights at 5:30. So, and then here's all those resources that I was talking about. That's on the very last slide. So you can go through those. I'm going to be sending out the email hopefully within 30 minutes to everyone, so you all can get it. Here's all of our contact information. And just, of course, remembering that these practices are for all in spirit. Our just physical reality has not caught up there yet. And that is the point, to up-level ourselves, right? To expand our consciousness. So these practices, this inclusivity is for all, right? And we want to offer these spaces to help raise that awareness and in a compassionate and kind way, but with some accountability, okay? So anyway, that is it. Thank you all so much. We're so glad you're here, and there was so much interest around this. So till next quarter, where we up-level every offering. So thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, bye. What? Okay, there we go. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording for a second. Stop. Okay.